Over the years of making videos, I've received quite a few different comments from overly aggressive individuals who don't want to pay for building permits. And I can't argue with them because sometimes these building permits and the fees are ridiculous. For example, one time I remember working on a project in a wealthy neighborhood, and we were installing siding on the front of the house. And for whatever reason, the person I was working for forgot to get building permits to remove and replace the windows. So keep in mind that we're already on the project. The building inspector is not going to have to do any additional work. However, one day the building inspector drove by and seen us replacing the windows and somehow pulled out one of his portable computers and found out that we didn't have permits to replace the windows. So the original permit was for about $1,200 if I remember correctly. And to replace the windows was going to be another $600. Now I do remember that number because I just couldn't believe the amount of money that this homeowner had to spend to replace the siding and a few windows. So if you're one of those people who have went down and purchased a building permit before and think that the prices for these permits are ridiculously out of control, then maybe by building a non-permanent structure like a wood frame deck that is not going to have any concrete footings and will not be attached to your house with a ledger might just save you a few $1,000s. So let's go ahead and get started with our deck here that is not going to be permanently attached to the property by using some type of concrete footings or even a ledger to attach it to the building, because it's going to be sitting directly on the ground. And of course, that's the key reason why you wouldn't need a building permit, because this would be a deck that you could assemble and take apart. So this isn't going to work for a large deck that's going to be about 4 or 5 feet off the ground. It's meant more to be for a small deck that you can sit on the ground and maybe have 1 or 2 steps going up to it. And another thing, I'm not going to provide you with step-by-step instructions on how to assemble this deck, but I am going to provide you with some information on some of the lumber you could use, like for example, a piece of ground-rated pressure-treated lumber, or a piece of lumber that isn't going to deteriorate faster than another piece of lumber. And you could always use smaller or larger pieces of lumber, or have a smaller piece of lumber on the bottom that is going to be pressure treated, and then use a larger piece on the top, or even multiple larger pieces if you need a little more height. And of course, you could attach these pieces together with some type of building hardware, like a strap and some screws. And you could even rotate everything so that the decking can run in the opposite direction. And providing you with another method of construction, you could always rotate this back 90 degrees if you want the decking to go in the opposite direction, or the direction previously shown in the video. And of course, here we just have some beams sitting on top of the ground-rated pressure-treated lumber. Another thing to consider would be whether or not termites are a problem in your area, because most building codes require a 6-inch minimum distance between the ground and construction standard lumber. And this is a problem that could easily be solved by using a 4x6 or a 4x8. And I'm not going to suggest that the ground-rated pressure-treated lumber is going to be termite resistant either. But again, that's going to be another thing to think about. And we can also add to the list that you need to think about how you're going to construct this deck so that it can be adjusted or repaired as easily as possible. And another thing you might need to do will be to bury part of the pressure-treated lumber in the ground, or use a system that's going to use smaller beams. And something like this might require more structural supporting beams running in both directions, like we're looking at in this picture, spread out to support the span of the beams if you need to reduce their size. And again, this is just another method I'm suggesting. And for the grand finale in this video, a method that might provide you with a stronger foundation and a way to prevent moisture from accumulating at the bottom of the lumber. And that would be by building some type of a frame around the deck and then filling it with gravel, and then using the gravel to support your structural beams. I would also suggest to avoid placing anything next to the building. And with these types of framing methods, I don't see why you would need to place anything up against the original building. And the reason for that would be to prevent any moisture from being trapped in this area over a long period of time and eventually creating problems for the building. And another thing you might consider doing will be to drill some type of drainage holes through the frame so that if you do have a lot of water getting into this area, that it can drain out instead of being trapped in this area. And another thing you could always do would be to fill this area with gravel and then avoid using the frame. And again, I will leave that up to you which method you choose to use. And even though I have provided you with pressure treated lumber throughout the entire project, it's not going to be necessary all of the time, and you will be able to use construction standard lumber, especially in areas that have drier climates. And if you are in a drier climate, you might be able to use construction standard lumber throughout the entire project, especially if you're going to be using gravel. And remember, this is a non-permanent structure, and non-permanent structures might not require a building permit. And hopefully that makes sense. And of course, this brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it or learned something, then make sure that you let us know by hitting the thumbs up button or leaving a comment in the comment area. And any questions you have about this, feel free to leave them in the video comment area also, and I will answer them as soon as possible.